My car finally just threw the P0420 catalytic converter in efficiency code, which usually means you have to replace the catalytic converter because it's not doing its job properly anymore, which can cost you thousands and thousands plus in repairs alone. But today, we're gonna be testing Cataclean. Now we're not just gonna be pouring it in the fuel tank and hoping. We're gonna be logging O2 sensor data, measuring exhaust temperatures, putting a camera inside the exhaust, and we're also gonna really dial it in with a fuel injection cleaning service kit with the proper ratio with fuel to Cataclean mixture to make sure we get good results. Now I've seen a lot of people ranting and raving about the Cataclean product in my comment section alone, as well as all over the world of the internet, saying that this stuff actually does the trick. Its claim to fame is that it restores and maintains your exhaust system and fuel system, restores performance, and reduces emissions. Now with people saying it's flat out cleaned up their dirty converters and got them back on the road and passing emissions, I figured why not give this thing a try when we had the proper vehicle to do it to see if we get actual results. And finally, that day has come. So let's dig into it. Here is the report with the P0420 code. And to show everyone it's still an active code, let's rescan this thing on camera, read DTCs, memorized code, and you can see there it is in the flesh, the P0420 catalyst system efficiency below threshold. Now, so what does the P0420 converter code actually mean? So the long and the short of it is this. I know you guys hate explanations, you just love action, but you have exhaust gas coming into the converter from the front, and then you have exhaust going out. Pretty simple, right? Now the front oxygen sensor sees the most fluctuation in voltage, meaning as the exhaust gases come through, on a voltage scale from 0 to 1 volt, this being your center line, your pattern should look like this. Now, as the exhaust gases go through the converter and get filtered out, this rear oxygen sensor should stay pretty consistent, meaning that voltage, right, your 0 to 1 volt scale, the voltage the computer wants to see here should stay pretty consistent throughout with a couple of fluctuations as you're driving. Now, in a nutshell, what's actually happening when you get that code is this thing is starting to soot up or degrading, and it's not being able to filter out the exhaust gases coming through. So then the value of the downstream oxygen sensor starts to see a similar value like this. And maybe you have some inefficiencies and it does something like that, which tells the computer that, hey, I'm not filtering anymore. Now on this particular model, this car actually has two catalytic converters, one up front and one in the back. Only one is actually monitored, however, by the computer, and it's this front one right here. The rear one is located here, but the computer does not look upon it for any data to see if it's actually filtering the exhaust system like the front one. And as you can see, this is our front oxygen sensor right here, and the rear oxygen sensor is located right here, monitoring the converter right here. So first things first, let's get these oxygen sensors out of the way. We'll get a camera down there and see if we notice anything that's built up like soot or debris on the filter system of the converter. And we'll take a before picture, and then after we do the Cataclean, we'll do an after picture to see if it's actually cleaned up any of the honeycomb element on this converter itself, and see if it's actually doing its job. All right, there. Both of the oxygen sensors are now out, upstream, downstream. Now let's get the camera down into the oxygen sensor hole. We'll do the front one first, and then we'll move on to the back one, just see if we can get a good visual of the honeycomb filter itself and see if there's any debris on it. There is the filter portion of the converter right there, that honeycomb portion. That is the converter that filters out the exhaust, okay? Now, I did notice this right here. It looks like the converter is actually starting to degrade right here on this corner. So that is not a good sign. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to filter it out. But you don't necessarily want to see that because that is a sign of the converter element starting to degrade a little bit. When you're zooming in close, you can kind of see past that honeycomb. So I don't think there's any like restrictions or anything like that. But it does look like there's stuff built up on it. It almost looks like, you know, something you would see at the bottom of the ocean, right? Like the Titanic. There is the rear. You can see there's a little bit of a part right there that looks maybe a little bit damaged up in the top corner on this back one too. You can see this is actually cleaned up a lot back on the back side of the honeycomb. You don't see all that like fuzz, I would call it, up on the back side. So maybe there is just a little bit of restriction on the front and stuff that's causing it not to take those elements out of the exhaust. And now let's get those oxygen sensors back in place. Issues with the oxygen sensors, they all look good, so it's not like a false P0420 code. With like cracked exhausts or exhaust leaks and stuff like that can actually cause a P0420. And this exhaust system is all buttoned up. When I resealed this engine, the exhaust was obviously broken, and I've welded it since then. and all that stuff is nice and tight. So no issues with the exhaust system that could cause like a false P0420 code, but it is important to note that those things could actually cause that code. So be aware if you're fighting this issue that also can play a role on it. We got to get this thing heated up to operating temperature. So we're going to monitor that on here. You can see this one doesn't actually have a coolant temp gauge. It just has this little dummy light right there, that blue temperature light. So once that goes off, you're at operating temp. I think when it turns red, that means you're overheated. All right, I'm not quite at operating temp yet. I do have it revved up at like 2,500, 3,000 RPM. We're at 83 degrees Celsius, which is like probably like close to 190 degrees-ish. But I can see already, granted, that the converter is probably not at fully operated temp yet. But look at this downstream oxygen sensor. When you start to rev it up and really give it some gas, it starts to fluctuate pretty good. Look at this already. We're at 88 degrees Celsius. What we want to see is this. I started giving it more gas right about here, and you can see all these fluctuations here that you don't want to see in these big dips. That's not a good sign. That means that the converter isn't doing its job. We're gonna let it get a little bit warmer here. Let's get it to like 210 degrees and see what the converter starts to do there. And then we'll get some exhaust temperatures and see what that's looking like. And then we'll try the Cataclean and see if that starts to remedy some of that fluctuation on that rear oxygen sensor. So I'm on 2,500, 3,000 RPM again, and this is all fluctuating. You do not want to see this. It needs to be a steady line. That's why that P0420 is setting the code. So we do have a catalyst efficiency issue here. So fingers crossed that the Cataclean does the trick and fixes this stuff. Let's run out and get some exhaust temperatures really quick. So hopefully that's picking that up. We're at like 460-ish degrees at the back. With this heat shield in the way, it's gonna be a little bit tougher to figure out what the front of it is, but give or take 400 degrees, 430 degrees. So it's a little warmer in the back, which is what it should be. With the chemical reaction, it should be burning a little bit warmer at the back here. All right, now that we have some baseline results, we can move on to the Cataclean product. Now, the directions of this product is when you're about a quarter tank of gas, approximately 4 gallons, you're supposed to dump this entire bottle into your fuel tank and drive it around till almost E, and then fill it back up and you're ready to go. Now, I really wanted to isolate this product, so what we're gonna be using is a pressurized fuel injection cleaning kit, and we're gonna run 4 equal parts of Cataclean with a fuel mixture until all the product has run through the entire fuel system. Now, I think this is going to be the best option to see if this product actually works by doing it this way, and it will give us the best results. So I'm going to kill the fuel pump on this thing, and we will run the pressurized tank with the Cataclean in it, and we're going to do the same thing and monitor all the temperatures and the graph as it's running. So I have the first Cataclean mixture in the can. We just need to pressurize this tank. I'm gonna run it right around that 45, 50-ish PSI. I'm pretty sure that's what these kind of run. And once this is done, we're gonna repeat it 3 more times, so 4 times altogether, because that's how I divvied up it into fourths. So let's get the air pressure hooked up with this thing, and I'm gonna back it outside and run it, because this stuff smells like straight up acetone, which it might actually be just acetone. I don't know. I got it right around 45, 50 PSI. All right, so let's see if this thing fires up here. All right, so now we're gonna let it run for a little bit. We're gonna monitor that O2 sensor. I'm gonna let it warm up, and we'll check throughout these 4 runs that we do with this solution. We're gonna just check exhaust temperatures, and then when we're all done, we'll pull it back in, we'll pull the O2 sensors out, we'll take a look at the converter, and then it's nothing but drive time. I'm gonna drive it for quite a while because it took about, I would say, 100, 120 miles for this code to come back when I did the initial reset. So I got some driving to do. And you see with it running, I'm still maintaining that 45-ish PSI. This is the line. Hopefully I don't let it rub on anything and start a fire here. And then it just loops back into the fuel line here, and then the fuel system is disconnected. All right, guys, now I'm on my very first run. It's been running probably for like 20-ish minutes. It's at operating temp. It's been at operating temp for quite some time now. Mind you, we're just on our first run. Let's rev this thing up a bit and see what it does here. Jumping around. Let's see if it curbs out at 2,500 RPMs. Nah, she is pretty darn bouncy still at 2,500 RPMs. So I think it's still a little too premature to tell if it's really doing anything. I thought right from the get-go, just seeing the idle response on it was looking great. But you can still see at 2,500 RPMs, it's doing a lot of bouncing around. It is doing some stops here. Obviously, time will tell. Let's go get an exhaust temperature just on the first run, and then I'll fast forward through all the other steps, because this is probably going to take some time. And then we'll just catch the tail end of the number 4 run with the solution as well. And then we'll, again, check those oxygen sensors. All right, so currently, we're at like 560. It's almost 100 degrees hotter now with this acetone in there. Hop in the shop here where you can hear me, but this is 538 degrees. We were at 460, 450, I think. So basically 100 degrees hotter it's burning at with the Cataclean in there. So clearly whatever the product is, the solution is, it is causing it to burn hotter. I'm gonna buzz through the rest of this solution and we will get back to it. All right, we are on to our final cup of Cataclean fuel mixture in here. We're gonna check the exhaust temps and the graphs once more here this last time around because it's been running for well over an hour now. Get this thing pressured up once more. And we're gonna let this thing settle out once more here. We'll check those exhaust temps, check that O2 sensor, see how that's all looking. Then we're gonna let it cool down. I'll pull it in, we'll pull the O2 sensors out, get a visual of that honeycomb once more, and then we got, let's just say, a week of driving and see what it does. We just wanna monitor this O2 once more here. It's just idling right now. I know depending on the car, sometimes it'll do this little waveform here and then flatten out and then stay flattened out. Sometimes it'll fluctuate. I'm not really liking what I'm seeing here at higher RPMs, but I am noticing it's not fluctuating as much as it was before we did all this testing with the Cataclean. You can see this is a lot tighter up here as we let this thing idle out through. So that might be a good sign that this actually is possibly working. Yeah, look at that. That's just a good sign to see. I mean, before you were seeing all that massive fluctuation. Now it's getting much, much tighter towards the end here. Now when we let off idle here, you can see it does come back. You know, you give it some more throttles, it'll do its little jump, but maybe we're on to a good start here, I would say. All right, now the exhaust temps, believe it or not, I just had it at high idle, and we're at 284. The snapshot is 256, so it's getting colder for some reason. So we managed to get all of the Cataclean solution through the engine. Now let's get it back up in the air. We're gonna check with the camera on the front of the converter and the back of the converter by removing those oxygen sensors, and let's take a peek. All right, now with the car up in the air and the O2 sensors out, upon first glance here, this is the upstream oxygen sensor. And look at all the black soot that built up on the sensing portion of this O2 sensor. Same thing with the back one. So I'm assuming whatever's in the Cataclean, you know, if it is like an acetone or something like that, probably just made it run rich, which I don't think you'd want to see that. That doesn't look very good. But let's get the camera in there quick. It doesn't look like much has changed on the front. But as far as like particles and stuff like that, all that, it just kind of looks the same to me. And I'm really not sure if you would notice much of a difference. Either way, we're gonna check it. We'll check this back one still too. And there's the back portion. And that kind of looks similar to me. Not sure you would really notice much of a difference visually. So let's button up the O2 sensors back in it. Now we are all buttoned back up. The fuel system's all done. All the O2 sensors are back in place. I'm going to clear that P0420 code now. Clear DTC, yes. All right, let's just read the DTCs, make sure it's all gone. No DTCs found. Temporary, no DTCs found. Now the module is completely cleared of this code like it never even existed. So now all the monitors are reset, and now we just have to put some miles on this thing. So first up, it took about 100-ish miles to trigger that check engine light. So I think what I'm gonna do first is I have a bunch of errands to run that'll probably put just over 100 miles on this thing. And then I'm gonna be driving it for about a week here, and we'll try to rack up as many miles as possible to see if this actually works, like if it's a temporary fix, or if it actually is a long-term solution, or if it doesn't work at all. I'm off for a test drive now. 178,363. Let's reset these trips. And now let's see if this check engine light comes back on. right, and as you can see, we're at 178,578. Approximately 215 miles. Now, I've been driving this car every day for a week now. I had one big trip where I had to drive the thing straight for an hour and a half, and then an hour and a half back, so 3 hours probably total. And then the rest was just in-town driving. Now, I did bring the scanner with, and I just wanted to show you the readiness monitors, meaning the monitors that tell you if the system has passed or not. So we can actually see if the computer has passed the converter test on here, which it has, and I'll show you here. So we can actually see the readiness monitors on here, so we can click into this since DTC was cleared. And now you can see all of the stuff. The indicator is off, the misfire passed, the fuel system passed, comprehensive component monitoring, and then the catalyst monitoring is what we're looking for. And that is okay. So that system is now passing. Oxygen sensor monitoring, okay. The heater circuits are okay. Now I have to say I'm actually a little surprised because I don't believe in any of these snake oil products. I just don't think they ever seem to work. But so far this thing is actually working. I mean, it's doing a pretty good job. So what we're going to do before we go back to the shop and unpack all of this, we're just going to monitor that O2 sensor while we're down the highway. So I'm just going to put that graph on this scanner here. We'll just look at the O2 and see what it's doing as it's corresponding as we drive. And then we'll unpack all this when we get back to the shop. So here we go. All right, so here is what the graph looks like at idle currently. The line is nice and stable. Let's go get it on the highway, and then we'll just kind of peek over at this thing as we go and see if it kind of fluctuates like we don't want, or if it's actually kind of staying stable now. All right, I got the speed set at 55. We're traveling down a back road currently, and here is our results. Now, there's a few little dips as we go up hills, and the thing really has to accelerate, but for the most part, this is staying very, very consistent, which we want to see. So this is a good sign. We want to be seeing this. All right, well, there you have it. So for now, the Cataclean product has actually worked, I want to say. Now you can see by the catalyst monitoring system that all of it's passed. It's all okay. So everything that the computer is seeing is an acceptable range within the computer's parameters. Now, just to reiterate, this has only been a week's worth of driving, so things may change down the line. However, I do have 225 miles of drive time. There's been a lot of stop and go traffic, which I think would be the probably most upsetting thing for a converter. And mind you, before I tried to introduce this product into the converter to clean it up, this was setting a code probably every 80 to 100 miles-ish. It would always reset the code, and it would be like in a day or two of just driving, depending on how far I went with it, it would trigger that code, that P0420. Now again, I did go strong on that solution by running that fuel injection cleaning kit to try to clean this converter up. However, it does tell you to put this in at approximately a quarter tank or 4 gallons-ish, and then 10 to 15 miles, and then refuel after you've really kind of run this stuff through the engine. Maybe my solution was a hair strong. However, I don't think that was a bad thing, especially on this car with really high miles anyway. Now the Cataclean bottle actually says it claims to clean up injectors and carbon on the pistons and yada yada, which that may be. However, this engine is completely cleaned up since the last time I had it apart. So it's hard to say if that actually did anything. The power seems the same. And at the end of the day, it is a Subaru, so it doesn't really have any power. And now with these videos, I like to come to some agreement on the theory, or like a myth busted, if you will. And so far, I'm gonna say Cataclean did show improvement on this car's converter. Now, it's important to know from the visuals that I got from the pictures of the inside of the converter, there is some degrading going on, so that could be an issue down the line, but so far, it's, like I said, it's working good. Now, if you're experiencing this type of code in particular with your vehicle, I think just trying it might not be a bad thing. It's like 20 or 25 bucks or something like that. Got it from Walmart. It'd be worth a gamble just to try it before you throw a converter in these things, because they can be pretty expensive depending on what kind of car you drive. Now, this car will be due for an oil change at about 2,000-ish miles, so I'm gonna keep driving it. Not that I really want to, but I'm going to. And then we will check everything that I've kind of done to it so far with the transmission, the engine work, yada, yada, you name it, this converter cleaner. And we will just go over it together and then just kind of do a cost breakdown analysis of what I got into this old turd bag here. So there you have it. If you got converter issues, give it a shot. I would say it's probably worth the 20 bucks to give it a whirl and just see if you can save yourself a little bit of cha-ching, if you know what I mean. So appreciate you all for watching. We will see you in the next one.